at 5:55. But speaking of the transfer portal, a couple of notes, one football and one basketball. Football, Amarius Mims, stud from Georgia, was in the transfer portal. Paul doesn't get too excited about certain things because he just wants to see what happens when they can play. But when it comes to the transfer portal, this is why. And so, Georgia's Amarius Mims was in the transfer portal. You, on a couple of occasions in the last week, had mentioned the site that Florida State covers Florida State. There's others that he was going to Florida State.
WarChant.com reported, huge splash. He's committed. He's coming to Florida State. He comes on campus. They stalked him and followed him around the entire city of Tallahassee.
Maybe that's why he changed his mind.
All around. And, there's pictures of him eating at a barbecue place and the pictures of him every time, he got back to the facility and the coaches met him in the parking lot, which is what you do for your big-time transfer recruits. And they rolled out. The 850 rolled out for Amarius Mims. Today we find out Amarius Mims not in the portal anymore. He's going back to Georgia.
He's going back to Georgia, so Georgia just reloads by keeping one of their players. One other note about Alabama's spring game, and I want to get into and other college football notes as well, but there's also a college basketball note that kind of stunned everybody earlier today. And unless you're an Iowa State fan, you've been maybe bracing for this, but Alabama had their spring game. Their two most productive players, it appeared, were Jermaine Burton, who led Georgia the last couple of years in receptions, and also Jahmyr Gibbs, a running back who was a star at Georgia Tech. So, a lot of teams have benefited from the transfer portal, and, I'm sure Alabama's had theirs, we know, but they now have a couple of guys, new weapons. They didn't have the greatest spring game. They kind of were trying to rush it through because of weather, whatever, but two of their new, or at least in the spring game, which can be different, like preseason, Jermaine Burton and Jahmyr Gibbs, both of them were the ones that kind of shined for Alabama, along with others. Bryce Young was kind of erratic, but they'll be fine, and they added a couple of pieces to their pie as well.
Yeah, last year one of their big stars was Jamison Williams, who had come over from Ohio State. So, Alabama's used the transfer portal as well, and that's just one single example. But, going back to Mims, that's a good deal for Georgia. It's not even so much about his decision, even though for Florida State, schools like that, it is a topic of conversation. But it is going to be interesting to see how many pull the, I'm in and I'm out again, type of a deal, especially the better players that are more highly recruited. And I hope that doesn't become a habit. I don't blame the young man for deciding to stay where he was. Like, maybe that's what needs to happen more often, as you look around and you realize, hey, this is actually the best place for me. Or maybe it's just the NIL check that somebody cuts. But, I'm glad that there's not like a penalty for it. But I really don't wish that, this becomes like the common thing of jumping in and jumping back out. But, good for Georgia. That's good for them.
Well, it would just be like an NFL free agent going, and looking and then going back home when he finds what his offers are. And, that's how it's unfortunate, because then you have all this, this guy's transferring here and he's going to do it. Now, the real people at fault are the people who reported that he was coming before he came there. And WarChant.com is a gigantic, huge website with tons of members and tons of subscriptions. They've been doing it for a long time. So everybody whiffs now and again. They've got two pretty big ones this year, and Travis Hunter and this, but which kind of hurts them. But ultimately, Amarius Mims could have changed his mind and gone back. But the NIL is what it is, and that's how it has to work for you to get your best deal. There are many people who are capitalists upon capitalists that are all about the market, the free market, that are mad because the free market has hit college football. Well, this is what the free market is.
That's what America. It is. Yeah. From some of the chat discussion from Chris, the portal makes the rich teams richer and everyone else playing catch up. The portal will kill parity in college football.
It's also very much America.
Mike Kames, Alabama, overpaying their players to get them to come to Alabama. Justin R., I feel like there should be a rule where if you enter the portal, you cannot go back to your original school. Now, there are certain things that if they tidied it up a little bit, it would at least maybe slow it down. And that might be one of them. If you enter the portal, you can't go back to where you were. But then again, I'm sure everyone would cry, well, my God, that's not fair. A lot of teams have had their spring games. We're down to the last 2 weekends. There's 3 or 4 games the following weekend. And a lot of, you talk about the transfer portal, if it's been news now, Craig and Paul, what about after these spring games are completely done?
Well, I mean, that's the expectation, is that we will see a run perhaps on the transfer portal. Right now it's kind of a shallow pool. I mean, there's a lot of names in there, but there's clearly not a lot of names that a lot of people are after that are, the big, top prospects. I think mostly those guys have, all made decisions to return or, to go or whatever. But yeah, I don't know how I feel about a penalty for jumping in. I was just saying I'm glad that there's no penalty for it, but I do worry that it is going to just turn into another thing where a guy gets somebody to make a graphic for him to announce that he's entering the transfer portal, and then we get the graphic to announce he's coming back, and the it's like everything's a graphic now, every little piece of news. So, we've already gotten these various trends that we've added into our college football news cycle, and all I'm saying is, hey, good for Mims, but I hope that we don't see a run of guys jumping in and then jumping back. But if that happens, and it's just, going to be a part of the deal. So, it is what it is. Like, everybody gains from it. Everybody loses from it. Yeah. I mean, it's not really an exact science, and I don't think anybody's been untouched by it. I don't think anybody's not benefited from it. I mean, maybe there's a couple schools here and there that have not used it the way others have, but I can't sit here and it's part of the deal,
I think what's happened is everyone has benefited from it. Everyone has also lost with it. Some have lost more than others. Some have benefited more than others. From Jermaine, if you're in the portal, you don't participate, which means you should lose your position. That's penalty enough. And we were talking about last week the Auburn kids when we had the guest on, Cole Kublik, about Auburn. Some of the guys were across the street in there where they live, and they're in the transfer portal, and no one, they had some promises or whatever from Neilio. Good to hear from you, Neilio. Without any type of regulations, the portal will evolve into true free agency, if not already, particularly with huge opportunities within the availability of NIL. One other basketball.
I was going to say the story that we're about to get into is one that's definitely the free agency deal. But talking about Mims, I mean, he's not even a starter. I mean, he would have gone. He would have gone to Florida State, but he's not a starter on Georgia's football team. That's the crazy part. Is that he's a backup. So. That would have been huge for FSU, but Georgia gets to celebrate him coming back, and they're like, "Yay, depth!" Whereas he would have been like maybe a game changer for somebody else. That's how